Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Layman's Law School, where, in this case, two Southern gentlemen lawyers sit around and discuss the legal issues today with a layperson that we have to ask some of the questions about the legal issues of the day. Lindsay, what do we have to discuss today?
So we've got a couple. There's always some fun cases to talk about. Karen Reed's, of course, on the list. We actually did a survey recently on our YouTube asking this past week what they wanted us, so for Karen Reed fans, what they would like us to discuss next. So we're going to talk about the results of that poll a little bit later in the show.
Okay.
But before we get started, ladies and gentlemen.
But first.
The unfortunate.
The only thing that I'm good at right here is bringing you some refreshments.
Yes.
Well, after a long week.
Yeah, it's been a rough, long week.
That sound right there is always.
It's just like, it's like for the golfers out there, because that's another segue.
Yeah.
It's like, hearing that Masters theme song. It's spring. When you hear that pop of that Bud Light, Chase, you know it's a good Friday.
Yeah.
Well, these are cold today.
Yeah, just the local gas station, just got them, just picked them up. Appreciate my ladies there, as always. Always talk to them. Sometimes they have some legal issues. So, we try to help them out.
Well, speaking of the Masters, we have a Masters-related issue to discuss today.
That's right. And so if you don't know, if you're a first-time watcher or you haven't caught this before, we actually film and record this podcast in Augusta, Georgia. So in the next coming weeks, we've got the Augusta National Golf Tournament, which is always a fun time here in Augusta. But somebody else might not be having as much fun that's associated with the Augusta National. So Richard Globinski has been sentenced to 1 year in prison this month for transporting stolen Masters tournament memorabilia, including one of Arnold Palmer's green jackets.
My goodness.
Across state lines.
Yeah.
So basically what happened is this guy worked in the Augusta National warehouse. And during his time working there, ends up taking a couple green jackets, a letter from Bobby Jones, some other memorabilia, and sold it. Yeah. Made a lot of money. Took his family on some Disney trips, bought some nice luxury items for himself.
That's when I knew he was insane. I saw he spent like $160,000 at Disney World. The man obviously has got some loose screws if you do that.
Yeah, my goodness.
Hey, I'll be back in Disney World in 30 days, but I won't be spending that much money.
I'm just saying that's a lot of money to spend. Now, Disney World's expensive.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's $160,000 expensive. So.
And also, that's probably how you got caught.
There you go.
Spending all that money at Disney.
They got caught, I think, one of the ways in which people pull off these types of scams is the way in which they do inventory. So if they just say that T-shirts we have 5 boxes of T-shirts, right?
Yeah.
And he takes 5 boxes of T-shirts into the warehouse, okay?
Yeah.
It doesn't say that there are 35 in each box.
Yeah.
And he might just go and before anybody sees it, take 5 out of each box, and there's 30 in each box now.
And you can also, the other way you can do it, same as that, is that if you're in charge of, if that's your part
inventory,
of your inventory, well,
right.
You're not going to report it missing.
That's right.
So especially the things that the things that are memorabilia, not necessarily the things they sell in the store. The memorabilia, that's
I don't know how he got away with that.
Yeah, and I think I think he must have been in charge of. And but a lot of that's why it's federal too. So we'll keep on about it.
So we'll read. So the U.S. Attorney's Office issued a statement about this, and so I'm going to read from that, and then we'll kind of break down some of the questions that come from this, like you just mentioned, like why it became a federal case instead of a state case. But so Globinski admitted in a plea agreement that he stole the merchandise and memorabilia from 2009 to 2022. God dang, that's a long time to be getting away with something. Yeah. Which he was while he was employed by the club as a warehouse assistant. The merchandise included master shirts, hats, flags, watches, and other goods, while the memorabilia included historically significant items, such as the green jackets awarded to tournament winners Arnold Palmer, Gene Sarazen, and Ben Hogan. U.S. District Judge Sharon Johnson Coleman ordered Globinski to pay $3,448,842 in restitution to Augusta National. Yep. In addition to...
Yeah, I think that's what Augusta National was after the whole time.
Yeah.
Right, so they might not care if he spends another day in jail, but
you're going to pay us back.
They want the money.
And people are going to say, well, $3 million. Honestly, you could argue that number's low.
I was just about to say, what is a green jacket worth from Arnold Palmer?
That's what I mean. And I think if it was just There's a lot of
T-shirts
other
and
reasons
hats,
that we'll
yeah.
get into about, transferring property and all that. But one of the things that the federal government does is protect these kind of items, and they're going to take interest in it. If it's a cultural significant item, that they're going to protect it. It's like
Right.
an antique or something. If
Yeah.
it was just stolen goods, this might have been a state case. I don't know.
yeah.
But the federal, obviously Augusta National has
Well,
some superpower.
right.
But it being
and
so,
that has something to do with it. Yeah, I mean, it's Augusta National is different than say
Right.
like if Lindsay stole some Hawk Law Group T-shirts.
I can promise
Lindsay's
you,
probably getting fired. But
the
not-
money that they lost from the inventory is a penny to them.
to them.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
But when you steal the
For
green
that
jackets
long,
and you
yeah,
steal
and you do it for that
Bobby
long,
Jones'
yeah.
letter, like those things, they can replace their money. They can't replace that.
Yeah.
Well, also, don't you think that makes you feel a little stupid? You're
Absolutely.
Augusta National. How
Yeah.
are you going to sneak
For
a
that long?
green jacket
Yeah,
out
yeah.
from
And I know,
when they're
'cause
not allowed
we've
to leave the
had-
clubhouse and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
We've had cases where people will call us and have a likeness to the Masters logo, and that happens a lot.
Yeah.
And they come full force on. I'm talking mom and pop stores that are just. It's not the Masters logo, but it's close. I mean, they're sending
Yeah.
cease and desist to everybody.
Yeah, we had a Golf Augusta here that they shut down because they called it Golf Augusta.
Right.
Right. So.
Yeah. Well, and they also.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know that I looked, there's not like an official sort of rule about your, things you buy at the Masters and reselling them. However, I'm sure we've all heard the rumors that they have people specifically employed that go online and either buy their stuff back or they pay attention to who's trying to sell it, and you may lose your badges because of
Right.
it.
Right.
So there's a real, especially for us locally, a lot of people outside of this area probably you wouldn't think of that, but around here it's common
Yeah.
lore, if you
And it
will, to
changes-
not sell your stuff.
Right. It changes a little bit because it used to be, growing up here, Chase, and I'm right down the road, it was more. A lot of people had badges, and it was more. Now it's a lot more corporate.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you got people running in, buying, I don't know, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 worth of stuff, and then running out and
Yeah.
then selling it on eBay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're looking for those people, and when they find them, like you said, you lose your badge, and that's
Yeah,
for
that's it
life.
forever, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the risk you take. But I think you made a good point. Like, they were embarrassed about it, but my point was that generally they attack so hard prior to any litigation that
Yeah.
it solves it.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
this one, they knew they were going to take a hit in the public eye. But that's what I mean. If it was not the memorabilia, this guy may have been okay. But
yeah.
when you do that,
Yeah.
they're gonna get you.
Yeah. And so why did this become a federal case rather than a state one?
Well, the federal government has purview over cases in which involve transferring things across state lines.
Gotcha.
So whether or not you can prosecute a case or is determined a lot of times about your jurisdiction and whether or not you have jurisdiction over that particular issue. And with the fact that he's transferring these from Georgia
them
to Florida,
and Chicago
right?
as
And
well.
then they go out all across the country to different buyers. This is definitely an interstate commerce related issue. That's a power that's given to the federal government by the Constitution. And so the feds are going to come in and have their say on somebody that's violating laws using interstate commerce. So
Yeah.
And especially you're talking big money and a lot of different. So you could do this. You could still prosecute him in Georgia, and then each and every state that these actions took place. But that's a lot of entities having to talk and having to, and things are getting continued and all this, where the federal government can, since there is, like Jay said, that interstate commerce clause, that they can kind of come over and incorporate all of it into one.
Right.
But it does bring a good point that we talked about, I believe it was last podcast, is that the state can charge him for theft, burglary, and possession of stolen property. That Georgia can, and all these other states. And so, even though he served a year, I mean, it's probably not going to happen. But you can charge this person with these
State
crimes in
crimes,
state,
yeah.
and they can serve it. And it can be consecutive, meaning it's after you serve this sentence, you do it
start
again.
another one. Yeah.
So, and a lot of times you'll see that on, if you lose a state case, then the feds will come up and prosecute that case. It usually doesn't go in reverse. Generally, if the federal government has a criminal case on you, they have it's already done. Like the state kind of arrests you and then investigate. The federal government already has everything. As soon as you're arrested, they've already let you go a long time. They've been watching you. Yeah. We've had that.
They build their case.
We've had that in the office. People come say, I had drugs in the car. A police officer pulled me over and I wasn't arrested. It's like, okay, well, buddy, I got some good news and some bad news.
Right, exactly. Well, he's going to be paying that $3 million back the rest of his life. He's not getting out from under that in bankruptcy. No. And speaking of paying for it the rest of your life, we have a verdict that came out in California. Where
so speaking
Starbucks
of hot cases,
there you go.
Let's spill the tea on this one. Basically, a gentleman got a lot more than he bargained for. Ordering from Starbucks in the drive-thru, he had a tray of three hot teas, and we actually have the video, and we're gonna watch it. So, have y'all seen the video yet?
I have not.
Oh, okay, great. So we're actually gonna watch the video, and basically what happens is that he gets his order, and one of the teas spills in his lap, which resulted in major damage to his genital area, as well as like his inner thighs, his groin and thighs. And so he sued Starbucks, probably because he was like, wait, that lady got away with it at McDonald's. I might have a case here. So let's take a look.
But so she's reaching out across the thing with the trace. Yeah, I think that one of the allegations here is that she improperly placed the cup and didn't put it all the way in. You can see it kind of just teetering. They're wobbling, and the top not being on correctly.
Which those tops are a pain anyway, right?
That's part of the negligence in this case is the way in which she actually handed it to him.
Packaged it,
it was supposed to be in that secured, and the top was supposed to be on good, and had the top been on good, had it been in the cup holder the way it was supposed to, it would not have fallen on him. So that's the negligence in this case. And
I was gonna say, have you? So the part of the video too, though, where it shows like, she's handed it to him. You can't really see. Like, if you've seen the video, like
I've seen it.
You can't really see what happens except that his car takes off.
Yeah.
And so my first viewing of it, I went, well, maybe he made the tea fall over, right?
No. You can see that it falls. As he's just trying to transfer it. And I think this is actually a DoorDash order. Like he's delivering this.
Yeah, that's right. He's a delivery guy.
Right. He's a delivery person, and this is a young man. And before you get mad about that $50 million amount, you have to consider, like, for all the guys out there, would you trade places with him? Okay, this coffee or this tea that spilled in his lap, on average, is served people serve it between 120 and 140 degrees. Yeah. A lot of times they make it a lot hotter, especially if it's freshly brewed right then, because they want, and this happened in the McDonald's case, they want the coffee to still be at that ideal temperature, 120 to 140. That's where most people drink it, and that's where most people like it. By the time it arrives, they want it to still be hot. And so they make it extra hot. The problem is at 140 degrees, that tea only has to stay on your skin for a couple of seconds before you get third-degree burns. And that's what happened here. He had third-degree burns and had to have skin grafts, and had nerve damage to his genitals and thighs. And this is, like I said, a young man that's got to live the rest of his life with all these injuries. And significant injury.
So wait, did you say already how much?
No.
You didn't?
No.
Okay. So how much does Starbucks make a day?
So Starbucks, and this is something that happened again in the McDonald's trial. In the McDonald's trial, they had a verdict, got a verdict for $2.7 million, which just so happened to turn out to be the profit that McDonald's makes on a cup of coffee worldwide every day. And Starbucks, it turns out, makes about 99 million or 100 million every single day in revenue. And so a jury a lot of times will do what they call symbolic retribution. If they feel like they harm somebody like this, at least they go back and they look at what would actually not necessarily harm, but punish or award some form of symbolic justice to the actual plaintiff by taking something significant from the defendant. And in this case, the defendant is a billion-dollar company. And so in order to take something significant from them, you have to award something pretty significant. And I honestly would not trade places with this guy for $50 million, and there's not a lot of guys out there that would, I don't think. So before you criticize that number, no one understand that he's going to have to live with this the rest of his life. He's disfigured. And like I said, he's a young man, and so he's got a lot of years of his life to live with it.
Well, and so this case is similar, like I said, to the McDonald's case. There's a lot of differences. The damages are very similar.
Yeah,
that's where the similarities really end,
and how the injuries
and how the injury occurred.
Yeah.
But the reason that McDonald, like you said, I think you said it was $2.7 million was the verdict, but they got a punitive damage of 100, 200 million. I forget the number.
What is punitive damage?
Punishment.
And so Starbucks didn't get punished, didn't have the punitive. The reason that McDonald's had it, you were talking about the heat of the coffee. McDonald's had all these complaints and all these
over 700 complaints of it being too hot.
Right, and
before it happened,
and they had internal notes, knowing people were getting hurt, knowing that the coffee was weighted, and they kept it at 180 to 190. And the reason they did it was not because people like to drink it that way, it's because they could leave it and wouldn't have to throw it away. It keeps the coffee fresh for longer.
Right, keeps it,
And so they were trained to do this. That McDonald's, the corporation,
then people could actually drink it.
Right. Yeah. And so McDonald's employees were trained to do this, where in the Starbucks case, it's completely different.
Trained to put you in danger.
They were. I didn't do the discovery in the case, obviously, but as a premise liability lawyer, I'm going to look at what the training was, and then they follow up on that training, and did they employees do what they were trained to do?
Right.
Here, they're not training them to take the coffee and make it worse and hotter and more dangerous. They're not training them to make the top of the coffee not right. So they're not trying. The verdict isn't a punishment. It's a symbolic punishment, but it's not. They weren't mad at Starbucks. It seems like they were going, "Hey, this is what seems fair." In the McDonald's case,
like it happened,
right.
In the McDonald's case, it was
an intentional choice.
Pissed, and the jury was pissed. Like the woman didn't get a whole lot. But the punitive damage was enormous.
Gotcha.
And because of that, guess what? McDonald's doesn't do that anymore.
That's right.
Yeah, and my mother will tell you that the coffee's not as good anymore. So, speaking, from hot beverages to a case that's been heating up for, it's always hot, this case, right?
It just keeps on giving.
Yeah, I mean, that's some of the comments that people have been making lately is just like, it's one thing after another. And of course, next week, the Karen retrial officially goes back to trial. And so
maybe.
Right? I mean, you never know.
Honestly,
like,
in this case, you don't know.
You have no idea.
In this case, you don't know.
Yeah. So this past week, we ran a poll asking what Karen Reed updates you'd like to see us cover the most, and we're going to reveal those results shortly. So now let's dive into the latest developments. There's so many things happening. Just this past week, with Proctor has happened.
Yeah.
There's been some questions about third-party evidence, all these different things. And so, but when we ran this poll, 50% of you said that you were dying to hear about new digital evidence claims.
Yeah.
And Lord, you got, this has been nothing but all these different things that have happened with their digital evidence, Google searches, the Sallyport videos being missing, Ring camera footage, all of that. And trust us, we hear you.
Yeah.
But we cannot unpack all of that on this episode, we realized. So instead, we're going to focus on Officer Michael Proctor's firing today.
Yeah.
Well, before Chase gets into it, I just have to say one thing. And I've said it when we first started covering Karen Reed. I cannot not think about the Police Academy movies when I hear Proctor. Every time. Proctor! It's just constant.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead. And he deserves kind of that criticism.
Well, his name has now become a verb when you mess up at your work. It's called going full Proctor. Going full Proctor.
Well, maybe he took over the Police Academy saying screaming Proctor. He's the new one. Chase, go ahead.
So Trooper Proctor was fired. He had 3 disciplinary hearings that the state police tribunal actually held, and they found that the text messages they sent were inappropriate. on multiple occasions, these text messages, first of all, the night of, or the night or day after, 16 hours after, he's sending messages like, she's a whack job. She's going,
Nutbag was one.
Nutbag. Yeah. And that
That's pretty nasty stuff on there too.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever called anybody a nutbag. That's
Yeah,
pretty bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whack job.
Vic says
Whack
shitbird
job.
a lot to me, so there ain't.
Yeah, he called her a whack job. He called her the C word, and that she's not skating, she's not getting out on this. So he'd already made up his mind, like 16 hours after this, that he only had one suspect. And on that text thread, we have high school
investigator
friends.
will tell you,
Yeah.
that's not how you're supposed to do it.
No,
If Sean was here,
you
he'd
go
be
with you
saying,
follow the evidence.
Yeah, you follow the evidence.
Yeah, and to make a determination that early is bad policing. And on this text thread, he had friends in high school, he had superiors, he had other police officers, he had people that had no business whatsoever in knowing anything about what's going on in the investigation, that he's giving all this information. He's disclosing medical conditions that she has.
Making fun of medical conditions.
Right, making fun of medical conditions, talking about looking for nudes, just being completely unprofessional. And in addition, it was revealed that he was drinking on the job, driving his state trooper, his
impressive.
car.
He's gonna have
He drank and then he drove his police cruiser.
Right.
So
That's going full Proctor.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
Go hard or go home, buddy.
So the way in which the defense is going to use this is going to, they used it very, very well in the first trial. They're going to use it again in the second trial. Basically the foundation of this case is the work of Trooper Proctor, and what it shows, what these text messages shows, what his conduct shows, is that he was completely biased, completely ignored important evidence, did not do good police work as far as investigating people inside the home or anything like that. He made it very clear that he wasn't going to do that, even in those text messages, saying that the homeowner, reassuring those people in the text thread, said the homeowner's going to catch shit. He's like, no, the homeowner's a Boston cop too. And the jury hated that in the first trial.
Yeah.
And they're going to hate it again in the second trial. And that is it. The defense is going to eat up Trooper Proctor again, and they're going to have more ammunition showing that this police officer was fired over how poorly he behaved in his conduct in this.
One thing I want to make sure it's clear too, Chase. I think everything you said was dead on. But I want to make sure people know that just because it's a new trial, you still that is the first trial was sworn testimony.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That is admissible.
Yeah.
Like, so you can't. It's not like he can come in and apologize and do all this stuff and say and just admit it up front. He's already lied about it and all these things. So that's coming in. That's coming in.
Yeah.
Well, and it wouldn't have been able to. Timing of this, of course, is that if he had not been officially fired,
Right.
They would not have allowed any ongoing internal affairs investigations to
come
be
in.
brought into it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Karen Reed and her team had to be very excited once that news
this
came out,
happened,
because it opens up that door, right? So, I did want to, we had on our poll, there was a comment from one of our users that I wanted to share, and maybe you guys can kind of give some feedback to this. YouTube user Graxus commented saying, I'm curious as to if the Commonwealth does not call Proctor as a witness. Can the defense call him as a hostile witness off the bat, or would they be restricted in what they could question him with? It seems the Commonwealth has placed all blame of the issue with evidence onto Proctor now that he's been fired.
Yeah. Well, I think it's impossible for them to not call Proctor. He's a chief investigator, so I think it's impossible.
I think the point on that, and you're right, is you still have to prove. You have to have the burden of proof. You have to go through it all. And if he's not there, then the defense moves for a directed verdict.
Because he can't testify to any of the collection
Is there
of
any way
evidence.
he wouldn't be there?
No.
There's no way.
There's almost no way that they can get in some of the evidence due to chain of custody, due to authenticity of some of the exhibits, some of the evidence that they want to admit. He's the witness by which they get that evidence in, and so they're going to have to bring him up. They can. They're not going to be able to limit where the defense goes. Usually, you're limited in going into the areas in which your direct on the direct examination covered, right? But you are allowed to go into areas that question the person's credibility and their bias.
And that door is wide
and that
open.
door is that door
Those gave
is
me chills thinking
forever
about that.
is
That door is wide
forever wide open when it comes to Trooper Proctor. So whatever case of the Commonwealth brings, they're going to have to deal with the tainted evidence or the tainted investigation that Proctor did.
The only way to really do that is, and this is what is going to happen. If when he testifies, he's going to come in and just fall on the sword and say, "I'm the worst human ever.
Yeah.
I'm the most despicable person. I hate myself. You're going to hate me, but what I did is still true."
Yeah,
That's because if you don't, your credibility's gone. I mean, his credibility's already hair thin.
Yeah.
So that's the only way, and that's what the state will prep him to do. Is they're going to start off with just saying, "Introduce yourself," and then they're basically going to say,
They should.
fall on the. They have to. They have to.
They should get all in front of this
to
talk about it with the jurors. Like, you're going to hear text messages.
Yep, and it's
that
going
are
to hurt.
terrible.
It's awful, and then he's going to, and that's the first thing you do when he's up there.
Yeah.
You don't make him a superhero.
You take away the steam for the defense,
because then the defense comes
just
in
repeating. It's like, oh, we've already heard this.
Yep.
Yeah.
So now you're just beating up on him.
Yeah, now you're just beating up on the guy, and he's a fired.
He's already admitted it.
Yeah, he's already admitted it. He's already done it wrong, and you're just beating a dead horse. Yep. And the jury doesn't like having their time wasted.
Well, and nobody likes a bully.
Yeah,
and then it makes the defense look like a bully if you can mention it, but if you start beating up people, when you have cases, my dad, like I said, a long time prosecutor, if he had an elderly woman or something, and she might be a bad person, he would say you have to be very delicate because the jury's going to hate you as the lawyer, even if they feel like you're picking on them, kind of thing. Nobody likes a bully.
Yeah.
So what do you think the defense? All right, so you guys kind of talked about what you think the prosecution strategy will be. What with this defense team that you've seen so far, and obviously we got some new players on the defense team.
Sure.
Which is a nice segue into a former juror who's now on the Karen Reed's legal team, one of the former jurors from the first trial.
Yeah.
So how does the defense approach it and not make the mistake that you're talking about? Because I would say the majority of the public opinion that we see on YouTube is that we've got a biased judge. Karen Reed should go free. People also really want justice for John, Officer John O'Keefe. Even though, and some people, it doesn't even matter whether Karen's guilty or not. They want justice, period. Sure. So all these factors, like the defense, how do they not come across as like sort of shooting themselves in the foot?
So
no pun intended.
This is how I would do it. This is, I think they'll probably have similar. It's kind of like calling a football game, right? You're going to have design plays. They'd like to script out the first 10 plays or so. Yep. So you'd have that with each witness, but they're going to have two playbooks. One, if they don't get out in front of it, that's hammer him playbook, and then one that's still going to hammer him, but it's just not as forceful. And then you just have to read it. You just have to play. I mean, you just have to feel it. That's it.
It's
and
a
these
part
guys
of,
will do that.
It's a part of being a trial lawyer that you have to react in the moment. And Reed's exactly right. They're going to prepare two crosses, and one is going to be if they get out in front of it, and one is going to be, and they, when I say get out in front of it, they talk about all of the bad stuff beforehand. So that they don't duplicate the evidence, so they don't bore the jury with repetitive stuff. They're going to have a second script for that. That's what I would anticipate. And the way that they're going to use this is they're going to sow reasonable doubt. That's, you have what they will characterize as a biased investigation that was biased from the outset, as evidenced by the text messages that he sent out saying, she's not skating out of this one, she's a whack job. And he had already decided who was responsible for this. And then showing his basically lack of integrity. I mean, a lack of integrity and a lack of credibility go hand in hand, and by showing that he is willing to violate any sort of like oath that he has as service to the public, as being a unbiased, following the evidence type of investigator, it's going to make trusting anything that he puts forward and the investigation puts forward as dubious. It's going to be questionable. I mean, one of the pieces of evidence that they thought that was very, very good for them, the prosecution, was a hair that they found that belonged to John O'Keefe on the back of her, on the bumper of her car.
Yeah.
They towed that car for over 60 miles, okay, through a blizzard, right?
Yeah.
And that strains credibility that a hair is going to stay on a bumper, okay?
Well, if it's 50-50, you've already lost on that credibility side. I mean,
right. Just on that piece of evidence.
Right.
Then you have.
I don't know. You ever got an eyelash stuck to your face?
Yeah, I know, but
it's hard to get off.
But that's what I'm saying. Like if it's questionable in a jury's mind,
and
then the only thing they can rely on is somebody who they've proven lies and does all these terrible things.
That has no reason to try.
How does his hair get there?
Yeah.
I mean, it's on there. So how does it get there? So that makes you incredibly suspicious of like someone trying to make this stick. In other words, sticking to the bumper, sticking to Karen Reed. That is one of the clear ways in which to do it.
Knowing that really, as a police officer, you should not be speaking in the way that you did in these text messages, but you did anyway. Yeah. What are you trying What are you trying to convince people of?
Where's the line? If you're lying about this or you don't do this on your job, if I'm a juror, that's what I'm looking at.
Right.
You didn't follow the rules not to drink and drive your police cruiser.
Where's the line for you?
And that's what one of the things we're going to talk about today, because it came out while we were preparing for this podcast.
Yeah.
That Victoria George had a problem with. Victoria George is a alternate juror from the first trial that has now filed an appearance to join the defense team for Karen Reed. She was an alternate juror. She sat through the whole entire first trial, But as you corrected me before the show, she did not sit in the jury deliberations. She did not participate in the
alternate.
jury deliberations.
All right, so she didn't hear any of that conversation.
I'm not sure if she was not present for the deliberations.
I know she
wasn't participating in the deliberations. Right. This woman has a law degree from Northwestern. She's a Princeton graduate. She's a rule follower. And the reason why we kind of know this is because like any sort of impropriety that could have possibly been placed on her as a juror, she mentioned to Judge Cannone she saw a free Karen Reed, sign. She's not supposed to look at anything that is, and consider it as evidence or anything. That's outside of what is presented in court. Well, she mentioned it. She mentioned driving past that billboard, right, to the judge to make sure that she was still okay to serve as a juror, right? She's already served on 2 juries prior to this and served as a foreperson for one of them. She was pregnant at the time of this trial that she was serving on the jury for, and did not ask for to be excused. If I have a pregnant woman on the jury,
I would have,
right. I don't know what she's going through, but I imagine that's not the most comfortable thing to be sitting. Yeah, I would. If she wants out, I'm letting her out. She didn't want out. She wanted to be involved in this process. This is a person that's very active in the and she found, and for her, it was Trooper Proctor's bias and his conduct that made her feel like the state could not ever prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Karen Reed was guilty of anything in this case, and why she eventually decided to actually join the defense team. But there's a lot of other stuff that played into that. She was instrumental in removing one of the jurors. One of the jurors actually was very critical openly of Karen Reed amongst the other jurors prior to the deliberations, and she brought it to her and another juror brought it to the attention of Judge Cannone, and that juror was dismissed. So she had one of the other jurors actually dismissed. She requested a sidebar with the judge, as a juror, because she knows what her rights are. When she was excluded as a actual deliberating juror, the state of Massachusetts has a very unique way of actually picking alternates. They put them put a bunch of tiles with a bunch of numbers in a little thing. They spin it and they pull out 2 tiles, and that's how the alternates are picked.
It's like bingo,
right? And it turns out that both her and the other juror were very defense leaning, and she mentioned to the judge that. While those tiles were pulled out, no one ever showed her her number, right? And she says that she felt like that it was beyond a coincidence that she and this other juror who had brought it to their attention, that the judge's attention, that this other juror was critical of Karen Reed and had that juror removed, that they both of them were excluded as being deliberating jurors. And she had a problem with the fact that Judge Canone picked a former police officer who had told everyone that he'd been hit by a car in the past as the foreperson for the jury. So all these things weighed into what ultimately became her decision. She basically says that at one point she said, if as a lawyer I was going to be too afraid to stand up for what I believe in, then who's going to stand up for what I believe in? And when she just basically feels like she did not get a fair investigation and wants to be a part of the team that's going to try and exonerate Karen Reed. I applaud her for that, but how do you feel, Reed, about her joining the defense team?
Well, we talked a little bit about it. I mean, I think it kind of taints it a little bit in the public eye. And there's nothing that she's done or is doing that is incorrect or wrong. But it feels like, and the public eye doesn't matter when you're trying the case. So, you take all the help you can get. But I think it's going to hurt them in the public view, hurt the defense in the public view, just because the defense is on high ground right now still, even though there was some issues that may have occurred, blah, blah.
Right.
But they, with all the problems that the prosecution has had in the public eye, this kind of gives the public another punch back for the
See, I disagree. Yeah. I think that the public's going to see this as a clear sign.
Well, that's kind of like politics, right? If you're on one side, you're going to see it's clear. You're on the other side, you're going to see it's clear. I'm thinking the people in the middle are going to look at it and go, well, that's not really fair. Even though it is, all these attorneys run focus groups after focus groups after focus groups.
But to have somebody that's already sat through deliberate,
But it would be a great advantage for a lot of things. First of all, the main thing, and this is what I encourage everybody to watch if you're watching the trial at all, is what is the theme of the defense? And with this woman watching the entire first trial, she's going to have intimate knowledge of what themes work and what themes don't.
So that was my point, was that I don't care one way or the other if she is. I don't know if there's rules against her or whatever, but I would think somebody would object because she sat there, whether she was able to actually be active, but sat there and watched how a jury like we said, we don't know if she was in the deliberations, but was still able to see all the things sitting from a juror's perspective. So she has, to your point, you could do focus groups, but I'm saying she has an advantage that now the defense has.
Right?
I think.
You can try the case yourself if you want. You can use any defense mechanism. They've had their time to try that case. All those people can do whatever they want to do. They can go to law school, and a juror can go to law school and jump on
graduate and then jump on the case.
I mean, and I think that's completely fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the burden of the state to prove the case.
That's right.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah, but I think that the state has the right to talk to the jurors, the other jurors in the case, and I know that they have done that. And as part of the reason in which they're actually retrying her is because of some of the statements that they got from some of the jurors. Because if they found out that they only had one holdout. And that they weren't ever going to get a real conviction, and they know that they've got more than just one person that was a holdout.
And they're looking the same thing with this witness. They're going to be polling the jurors for the theme, what works, what doesn't. So you'll see both sides will have a theme throughout the trial. Yeah. And you might not pick up on it the first day, but you'll start hearing it over and over. And so that's going to be, both sides are going to have a theme. And I don't know what their theme is, but you'll hear it quickly.
Yeah. They focused on the last time a little bit on the third party culprit actual defense, where they said there's another person that could have done this, Brian Higgins, who had a romantic relationship with
bigger go home on that
with
the second one.
Karen Reed. They had Colin Albert, who was a young man that apparently had injuries, injuries to his hand, shown in pictures just months after this. The other Alberts that were the other Alberts that were there at the house, that they had the dog that the wounds kind of show what looks like a dog bite, And I think for that reason, I think Judge Cannone is going to allow that third-party culprit. But I think that the basic theme is going to be you can't convict on this type of evidence. Like this is not.
It's kind of like
doesn't
writing a
rise to the
brief.
level of beyond a reasonable doubt, because it's reasonable to doubt whether or not Proctor was biased in this particular case, whether or not he, put evidence, tainted it.
It's reasonable to doubt that a piece of hair could survive on a car that was towed through a blizzard.
It's kind of like writing a brief, Chase. I mean, don't you think it's you put that strong argument of that, and then the secondary argument is because people want to blame somebody,
do this.
and the jurors want somebody.
Yeah, they want it to go somewhere. Yeah. Like this could have happened some other way.
Right. So there's going to be a twofold.
If there's a viable, third party, I think that in this case, I think
jurors want that.
They want an alternative theory.
Yep.
They want an alternative idea, and I think that they have enough evidence, not only with Brian Higgins, but Colin Albert to be able to present that defense. But I think it's going to be a secondary kind of defense. It's like
I agree.
This is going to be it's a weaker argument.
Yep.
So let's talk about that for a second, because what keeps coming in my head, is the movie Lincoln Lawyer. Okay, have everybody at the table seen it?
Oh yeah, it's been a while.
Okay,
Yeah.
So essentially, if you're a viewer and you haven't seen the Lincoln Lawyer, you should go watch it because Matthew McConaughey is great in it. But what happens is that a lawyer takes a case that he finds out that his client is guilty. But not only guilty, he's guilty for a previous crime that I believe that lawyer sent somebody away, like was part of that person gets sent to jail. And he now knows that there's an innocent man sitting on in jail. And so all these things happen, but at the end he ends up essentially having to, the current client he has to defend him just like he would, even though he knows he's guilty, right? He can't.
That's right.
And so his client ends up being not guilty, sentenced not guilty. But after that, you see where he has talked to the other authorities and gotten, somebody else is coming to arrest him for this previous crime. So this is kind of the same thing, but not the same thing. But I guess what I'm getting at is if Karen Reed is found not guilty, but now all these things have been brought up about Higgins and, this other guy that had the, marks on his hand, what happens?
They can be charged. They could be. I mean, if they have enough evidence, just like anybody else, they could be charged.
So does Karen Reed's team just go, here's everything we found?
Well, they don't have it already.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they're not going to get it. They're not going to get it, but it's in part. I mean, and that's the real tragedy in all this, is that there isn't going to be justice for John O'Keefe, most likely. Okay, there should. I would say
the evidence is already messed up on the person that they were attempting to get a conviction on.
Yeah.
The secondary people. The evidence is already messed up.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Right.
If Proctor didn't do what he was supposed to, and he was trying to get this person, and it happens to be somebody else, I don't know if it was or not, but let's say it was. There's no evidence.
Right.
There's
no evidence because he didn't go in the house. He didn't question those people the night of. They didn't take any pictures in the house. They didn't go down in the basement. They didn't pull up the basement floor to see if there was any blood, see if they had a fight. I mean, these are all things that would clear up third-party culprit issues, but it's because they didn't do a proper investigation that
now if they found a smoking gun, then yes, but outside of that, it's not happening.
Right. Yeah, it's very tragic and unfortunate that this is happening the way it is, but this is a great lesson in reasonable doubt, understanding what reasonable doubt is and what's required in order to actually take someone's liberty from them and to put them in jail. When you have the state that has all this power, that has all these resources, and they abuse their power in the way in which Proctor has in this particular case, and when they behave in such a way that you question the integrity of the investigation, the authenticity of the evidence, that is the hallmark of reasonable doubt that a jury hangs their hat on when they say, okay, no, we're not taking this person's liberty from them because you guys didn't prove it. Yep. And I think that you're going to see something similar in the second trial that you saw in the first. They may convict her of the manslaughter. That's the charge that they were hung up on in the in the first trial was the manslaughter charge, and that is they believe that she might have been involved in his
She could have
death,
accidentally.
but she accidentally did it.
Accidentally
Right.
did
So
it, okay.
so that is ultimately I think where it's going to fall again, and honestly, what they should have charged her with in the first place.
Yeah.
This whole second-degree murder with some sort of malice or intent is stretching it.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Total side note, way back when we did early episodes, maybe the first episode we ever did about Karen Reed, a prediction was made that there would be a Netflix documentary, and
Boom.
dang it, HBO Max
HBO
is
got
the
one.
one who got, it's I think as of March 5th it went out.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
was-
5 episode.
I hate that. I hate
It was
I missed
pretty
that.
good. They didn't cover the trial.
Oh, you didn't miss it. It's up there.
I know, but I missed
watch
it. I
it.
missed calling it Netflix.
Oh.
So, yeah. I hate
Yeah,
that.
but they did it. They did a pretty good job. They can't cover 63 witnesses,
Yeah.
and all their testimony, but at the same time, they did a pretty good job with what they had. And they
What's
showed
your
the-
review for anybody who hadn't watched it that might want to? Would you give it how many stars out of 5?
Yeah, I'd give it a 4 out of 5.
Well, if
but-
you want to watch the new trial or interested in that, this is
Yeah.
a quick little.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff, so this might be a
Get
way
you
to
up to
jump
speed.
up there.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's also, if you watch that documentary, I'll say this: there's a reason why criminal defendants can't be forced to testify. Okay,
Yeah.
because it can be incriminating.
Yeah.
And they're not lawyers. They're not
Yeah.
Well, you can
sophisticated.
say innocent things that can be
That-
switched and turned. We do have that in civil all the
Right.
time. And
Where
don't
you
even-
have lawyers that are
there's a-
skilled at
So
doing
there's a
that.
clip that was on
Yeah.
YouTube from the show, and you could tell that they were not our audience who knows their stuff with their Karen Reed. You could tell it was probably a very different audience because it was very much like, why is she smiling during this while
Yeah.
she's talking about this? Where
Well,
I mean, was
You
very
make anybody
well, let me-
look
let
bad
me-
in
attacked
that
her in a
trial.
big way, and I was like, these people can't possibly know all the details of the case.
but-
to attack her in this way when this is not what you normally see online.
Here's the thing: is that she's nervous about what she wears. Does she
Absolutely.
appear too provocative in her
People say like
clothes
she
or
doesn't even
whatever?
seem like she's sad about John dying. or
Exactly.
Officer
Well,
O'Keefe.
I mean, what would you? How much sympathy would you be able to garner? You're already, and this happened years ago. Number one, number two, what if you're completely innocent and you're being put through all this and it's not true?
Yeah.
Right. You would be angry about that.
There's no
right?
room left
Yeah,
for to me.
you're right. You
The
would be-
grief thing is
right.
this: there's no room right now for her to for grief.
Yeah,
she
she's like,
has. She
y'all-
actually
y'all are
probably
trying
hasn't
to,
grieved.
Y'all are trying to kill me. Y'all are trying to take
Yeah.
my life from me.
She actually probably hasn't processed
Right.
her grief at all.
Yeah, and the reason why I brought up the whole you can't testify is because in that documentary she's not very likable.
Yeah.
She does smile way too much for a criminal defendant for me. She does smirk and have like little faces or whatever, but she's kind of like what I learned over the documentary is her personality, because I didn't know this during the trial.
Yeah.
Her personality is kind of fiery and confrontational. She's not shrinking violet by any stretch of the imagination. And that's not something that a lot of guys like. That's not something a lot of girls like.
Yeah.
And the defense team, I think, did a great job of actually keeping her from actually testifying because they recognize there's some issues with her personality.
Might not be so likable.
Yeah. So that's what
But as we've said before, just because you're not a nice person doesn't
people
mean you're
like-
guilty.
That's right. Absolutely. You can be a jerk all day long, but
still be innocent.
doesn't mean you have to go to jail for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Well, obviously the trial starts next week. The first couple of weeks will be jury selection,
That's
right?
That's right.
And so we would love to know in the comments your predictions that you think. We've talked about a couple different ways we think the trial's going to go. Obviously, our audience is very knowledgeable of Karen Reed, and so we'd love to hear you guys tell us what you think is going to happen, how things are going to go. What strategies do you think that both sides, the prosecution and defense, will have going into it to start off? So thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you'll be notified the next time we have a new episode. See ya.